Welcome to Trulyfit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Connor, thanks so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast. Why don't you give my listeners and the audience a little background on what it is that you do in the health and fitness industry?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I am currently the Director of Sports Performance at Flagler College. It is a Division II NCAA institution in St. Augustine, Florida. In terms of I'll call myself a strength coach just in terms of that's what I've been doing in health and fitness, primarily speaking. I've worked with college athletes far more than I've worked with anybody else. With that said, I have worked with a large number of sedentary individuals or just people that aren't on a sports team but still want to be athletic or still want to look better naked, whatever it is. So by and large, I am a strength coach. However, and I still do currently dabble in personal training. Obviously, I work out myself. I'm a competitive bodybuilder, so kind of dip my toe, or at least have dipped my toe into a number of different things within the industry.
And what does it take to become a director of sports performance as far as credentials are concerned? You said that you were a strength coach. Is it more than that? Do you need a bachelor or a master's in something in particular? Tell us about your credentials to become a director of sports performance.
So there's two. I'll kind of explain it in two ways. There's what you need on paper that will even get your resume looked at, but then there's what it takes to actually be good at your job.
Yeah.
So on paper, you need a bachelor's degree in something exercise science related. So mine was quite literally exercise science, but exercise phys, kinesiology, any number of things like that will work just fine. And then obviously, any application that you look at is going to say master's preferred. So I have a master's. It's in organizational leadership and sports management, so not particularly relevant. And one thing I was told when I was deciding whether or not I was going to go to grad school was it's not so much that they, yes, obviously if you've got a master's in sport nutrition or kinesiology, obviously that's going to look better than mine, but in terms of should you get a master's or not, it's unfortunately the new bachelor's. So yeah. Again, that's sort of an on paper thing of you just kind of need it if you want to instantly move your resume, your application from the bachelor's pile to the master's pile. You'll be almost certainly they will want one of a couple certifications, and the ones that almost 99 times out of 100 that you'll see are CSCS, which is through the NSCA. You'll see USAW, which is USA Weightlifting, or you'll see SCCC, which is through the CSCCA. There's still a number of different ones that you can get, but that may or may not, that a hiring school may or may not take seriously. But those are the ones that I can absolutely guarantee if you say it to a strength coach. If you're on the interview and you say it to a strength coach, they're going to know what you're talking about. So on paper, in short, it's bachelor's, master's, and a certification or two, or the more the better. In terms of actually being good at the job, I have strength coach friends that are better coaches than me, that are way smarter than me, that on paper I'm quote unquote better than they are. So I graduated with some really stupid people, and they have the same degree as me, and there's probably some people saying that about me that are way smarter than I am. So at the end of the day, you still need the experience. Just because you have the piece of paper or the letters after your name doesn't automatically make you good at your position. One of the, I suppose I won't, this is complimentary. So I have a friend, James, who owns his own business. We worked together for a little while, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have, he finally got his master's in, I think, exercise science from an online program like CalU or IUP or something like that. But for the large majority of the time I knew him, his quote unquote education was religious studies or something to that degree. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but he had no relevance on paper credentials as far as coaching goes. And that dude will forever be smarter and a better coach than I am. So he's always somebody I use as an example of don't judge a book by its cover, because like I'm a good coach and I'm confident in what I can do, but he's always the example I use of you can't look at a resume and just assume someone's good at their job.
Yeah, I love how you said that. It's so important. It happens to us as personal trainers in the fitness industry. People come out day one, they get some sort of certification, National Academy of Sports Medicine, ACE, and they go, "Oh, I'm ready to train." It's like, well, no, you're not, because that is one small part of the business, and you can tell there's, I divide the business into two different types of people. Typically, ultimately, you want to be a little bit of both, but you have these people who maybe more like you, who are anatomical sleuths. They're really good at the science, right? They have no problem passing the test and getting their master's degree, but then you put them in front of people, have them design programs, have them be personable, have them, those sorts of skills take a time to develop. Some people have them, some people don't. You could always develop them down the road, but not everyone is sort of born with that sort of being what we call like an entra trainer, like being able to entertain, because that's also part of what we do. We're not just like corrective exercise. We have to put on a show sometimes for our clients as well. So I'm glad you said that, because there is a huge difference between having the credentials to do a job and then being good at a job, not just being good on paper. So do you, is there?
Well, I think real quick, sorry, like, because you touched on something that like year by year is, I think, it's becoming more important to me. So in my world, it's becoming more, it's becoming more prevalent, but I'm sure it predates me. But like being an enter trainer, I think like a lot of people have gotten so science-based and data-based in terms of like, this is the best training practice, this is the most efficient thing, this is the most optimal, and like they could be 100% correct, like, and that's all well and good, but like end of the day, if whoever you're training just absolutely hates what they're doing, it doesn't matter how efficient a leg extension is at building, this particular area of your quadriceps. Like if they friggin' hate leg extensions, I'm not going to have them do leg extensions. Yeah. So like a mediocre program executed with enthusiasm is probably going to yield you better results than the quote unquote perfect program executed with, I'm doing this because I have to.
100%, right? So adherence and consistency are why people are successful in their programs, right? They're adhering to the program, they're being consistent with the program, and they're not going to do that if they hate it. They're going to make excuses not to come see Connor. They're going to say, "Oh, I have other shit to do today, Connor. I don't feel like coming to see you." It's because they don't enjoy the program. And then also, from a coach's perspective, like, it should be a fun challenge for us, right? So if they go, Connor, I hate leg extensions, but we have to find another way to fire my quad and get this going. It's like, okay, well, that's why I went to school. Like, I'm going to use my brain and figure out other exercises where we can still engage and work this muscle and get to your goals without having to do this.
Yeah, and like to that point, like it's like it is fun. I should say like the most rewarding part is whenever like you are on, like example number 4 of like, well, they didn't like this, they didn't feel this one, this, that, and they can't do this one because they got a bad whatever. And then you finally get to it, and like they get that look on their face, so they have that reaction of like, oh yeah, like, yup, I feel it. Or it's like that immediate like, yup, this one works. And then there's just like something satisfying about like, yup, nailed it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And if you're a trainer out there listening and you haven't gotten to that's a problem, right? There should be instances almost on a daily basis where you're having clients say, I don't really feel this isn't going on. You have that what I call strategic two-way feedback between you and your client, and then you keep adjusting and adapting accordingly until they give you that feedback to say, oh yeah, this is working, this is going. And that's, not to go on a tangent here, but I talk a lot about this podcast why I don't like particular models. So NASM has a model, they have the OPT model, and for me, I'm sort of like anti-OPT model, because I want my clients, I need to know that my clients are feeling the exercise. I need to know that they're engaging the muscles. And they start from a stabilization level. And for me, a lot of the stabilization level stuff doesn't really sort of fire in the same way where they're creating that feel for the muscle, right? I'd rather put them down on a machine and have them press out and say, do you understand that your pec is firing here? Can you feel that? Rather than, I don't know, have them stand on one leg or on a BOSU. Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense.
And yeah, and like that term model, like, is the problem. It's not problematic. It's just I don't like that word problematic. But like, it has its weaknesses in the same way that periodization has its weaknesses. And it's not to say that I never periodize programs. Like I don't just throw stuff at a wall and see what sticks. Like with this interview, like we have a broad skeleton of what we're talking about, but we're not going to say like we have to do this, and this.
Yeah.
So like similarly, I'm going to periodize insofar that like I want certain I want to be eliciting certain training adaptations at certain times, and I want the training to trend towards that. But I can't make it so regimented that if I have to make some, like, even just a minor change, that I'm throwing my hands up and saying, well, it's ruined.
Yeah.
You know, like the program is, like, if you don't do this the exact way, then this program isn't going to work. Well, then, like, that's my fault. That's not theirs.
Yeah, and inevitably you're going to have to make a change. Something's going to happen, right? Especially if you're working with someone, let's say, over the course of a year, and you're working with athletes, so something always happens. There's an injury. They, you know, there's something is there's a former injury that's sneaking up on them, and they're presenting with some limitations and issues, and you have to adjust accordingly when you work with athletes.
Yeah, and they're going back to, like, you know, do you like this exercise or do you not? Like, I specifically, like, tell my all the athletes that I work with, like, we'll have, like, 4-week phases. And at the end of the 4th week, like, let's say it's a 3-day program, 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. At the end of the 4th week, on each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of that week, like, we'll take 10 minutes to talk about the program and say, like, okay, what did you like and what did you not like? And for the first, like, couple of times I did it, everyone just kind of blankly stared at me, like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the program. Like, they just, like, the concept of, like, offering any criticism whatsoever, like, constructive criticism, or it was difficult enough for them to say, like, I liked this, let alone say I didn't like this. And like, fair enough. It's hard for an athlete, for a 19-year-old, to look at the person that they were told is in charge and say, I don't like the thing that you did. So like, fair enough. But I tell them over and over, and it's starting to stick. But, like, I can write a good, let's say it's lacrosse. I can write a good lacrosse program with no feedback from anybody whatsoever. I can write a great lacrosse program, or I can write a Flagler lacrosse program, the name of the school. That's kind of how I describe it. It's like, I can write a Flagler lacrosse program if you guys are giving me as much feedback as possible. So, like, you know, if my philosophy was, well, all lacrosse players should squat, all right, cool. But if, like, let's say I've got 40 girls, and 30 of them say, like, dude, I freaking hate squats. Like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So instead of forcing 75% of the team to do something that they're either not comfortable with, or they don't think is effective, or for whatever reason just isn't good in their minds, I'm instead going to go looking for something else that a large majority of them think, okay, great, this is awesome. This is making me better at lacrosse. I understand why I'm doing this. I feel good after I've done it. I feel good before I do it, rather than sort of dreading, like, oh, shit, we have squats today.
Well, I want to sort of stay on topic here with this, because I think it's really interesting. For personal trainers creating sports programs, we're not that familiar with it, but it's happening a lot more. So you'll see personal trainers who, let's say, are starting to go to their local high schools and say, hey, can I work with your football team or baseball team or basketball team? But then they go, oh, shit, I don't know what to do. I'm used to working one-on-one with people. How do I design a program? Do you have a methodology, or is there a methodology in the industry wherein you're looking at other programs and you're just kind of editing them out? Do you have a sit down with the players to see what they like and don't like you just said? How exactly do you, like, really just start it from scratch?
Yeah, like, the first thing you're going to do is perform, like, a needs analysis of, okay, these are the common joint angles of the sport. These are the common muscle actions of the sport. These are the common energy system demands. And you're going to determine, like, okay, what athletic characteristics, or what athletic characteristics does a good athlete that participates in this sport possess? Then from there, like, already just with that's where the good program comes from. Because then you can look at sets and reps, exercise selection, exercise frequency, and, like, all that other stuff, and still write a good enough program, because if you've determined, okay, well, they use a lot of their phosphocreatine system, here's the more popular movements, or here's the more common movements that they make, here's what they do in the sagittal plane, like, just you can get as into the weeds with it as you want to. So then once you determine all of that, then it's, all right, well, I have essentially created the program. Here's what I think is best. Now I'm going to, in the interest of time, usually the very first one, I'm just going to run them through this and hope that I've done as well as I can. but that it becomes a great program over time as you continue to refine it. So if you're working with, it doesn't really matter who you're working with. Even if you're working with one person or you're working with a team or something in between, like you are gonna if you're doing your job right, like throughout the course of the program, not even just I'm gonna wait 4 weeks and then ask them, like day by day, you're at like before they even get in, you're saying like, how do y'all feel? So like Monday, if it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you know what they did on Monday, you should generally expect, like in your head, think like, okay, well by Wednesday, I should probably ask about their hamstrings or or whatever. Like whatever you hit on Monday, you should be asking on Wednesday, hey, how you guys doing with that? Did you like it? Did you get absolutely rocked? Or are you just like a little bit sore or whatever? So just continuing to ask those questions over the over the course of the training phase or whatever you want to call it, or even just over the course of the workout itself. Just the more that you're talking to them and the better of a relationship that you can develop with them, the easier it's going to be for them the more comfortable they're going to feel giving you feedback, and then you can use that feedback to refine the program.
That's great information. I appreciate that. And I think the other thing is people are just scared to start. But all exercise is good exercise, and you have to start from somewhere, and then you can just adjust the program by getting feedback from the people, like you said, right? So there's nothing you can do except analyze the sport itself, and what are they doing in the sport. If you're training a catcher, you probably don't need to be running long distances with your catchers, right? So and then analyze the sport, use your common sense from your training, and then adjust on the fly and just get started. I know it is daunting though for personal trainers because again we're so used to working one-on-one. But I want to again stay on topic here. You just mentioned how you're going to be training athletes differently based upon their needs. That is also intra-sport, I would believe too, right? So I don't know a lot about lacrosse, so I don't want to use that analogy, but I do. Let's say about football. If I'm training a center as opposed to a wide receiver, they're not going to necessarily be using the same program. Am I wrong there?
And again, it goes back to you can get as far into the weeds as you want. So, like, let's just pretend that I have $1 billion and I can hire, let's use the football team. Like, actually, we'll use a team that I have on campus. Like, let's say it's a soccer team. Like, technically, if I wanted to, we've got, let's split it up into keepers. I'll start even kind of broad. What is keepers, defenders, midfielders, and attackers? I could have a strength coach write a different program, or if it's just me, and I just shut myself in a room, I could write a different program for the keepers, the defenders, the midfielders, and the attackers. But then even further than that, if it's, okay, well, center backs and fullbacks need different programs, but they're both defenders, well, then you can split it up into that. You can have a center back program and a fullback program. A holding midfielder is going to have different demands than a winger, or a target man is going to have different, and you can just go on and on and on. You can get as deep into the weeds with it as you want. So it really just becomes, you sort of have to prioritize. You have to prioritize. I am I have 2 assistants. I cover 5 teams, and my assistants have their own teams as well. And so all of us, as we're deciding how specific of a program should I write, are going through the same thought process of, okay, yes, I could get as specific as humanly possible, but is that going to leave me, what is the cost-benefit ratio of that? Do I really want to spend 3 hours and making the slightest difference between this program and that program, where, as we mentioned earlier, the whole thing could go off the rails anyway because coach cancels lift, or we've got to change something because the bus got in late and everybody's totally shot. Yeah. So it's you just kind of have to weigh what you feel is appropriate given the amount of time and resources that you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's only so much bandwidth that you have, and where you're going to be using that at any given time. Let's talk about your lifting, I would say, or strength coach ideologies. Is there, if you were to look at other people in your industry, let's say you compare to some of the friends you just mentioned and others, do you have a different ideology than them? Do you do more Olympic lifting? Do you do more dynamic things? What exactly is your overall ideology in your strength training programs?
I'm not particularly married to any. I really can't think of an exercise that I'm like, okay, I don't care what athlete I have, everybody needs to do this. I would say more so. Like, so the reason, this isn't exactly going to answer the question, but it's close enough. Like, this isn't so much my training philosophy as it is kind of like my philosophy in general. But like, I think that my purpose in life is strengthen the individual. So, I did a whole bunch of thinking and decided, okay, how am I going to get fulfilled in life? And, I was doing a whole bunch of things over the last couple of years to try to figure out, okay, what am I doing? And so I came up with, if my elevator pitch to myself is strengthen the individual. And what I don't mean by that is quite literally strengthening somebody as a strength coach. I mean, like, strengthen the character of the individual. Now, it just so happens that the best way that I can go about doing that is using, like, the best tool available to me personally is a weight room, because I'm the most knowledgeable of that thing compared to anything else in my life. I'm most comfortable with it, and I can more easily relate lessons and facts of life to the weight room than I can anything else. So if my goal is to strengthen the individual and strengthen their character, then another way to put it is, I don't make good weightlifters, I make good people that lift weights. So if I can teach somebody to be consistent and disciplined and have respect for themselves and have respect for others and work well in a team setting and any other number of things that you want to mention, then it doesn't matter if they're in a weight room, a classroom, or a boardroom. Like, they're going to be successful no matter what, because those are universally applicable. So, so that, as I said, it doesn't exactly answer the training philosophy question, but it does guide my choices insofar that I am. The question that I have to answer to myself, that I have to ask myself and answer, is this helping to strengthen them internally, not just externally? So if am I presenting them an opportunity to do something that they've never done before, or to do something that they thought they couldn't possibly achieve? So like that's why I like working with this population, like of like 18 to 22 year olds, because quite often a lot of them have never been in a weight room before, or if they have, they haven't done anything that's particularly challenging. And I'm not a huge like max out kind of guy, but end of the day, like, you've got to challenge them with weights at some point. So seeing somebody like get underneath the bar, squat down, like squat deep and stand back up, and then get out from under it and say like, holy shit, like that's more than I weigh. I never thought I could do that in my life. Like, that to me is going to be is going to yield more benefits both on the field and in the classroom and everywhere else and in their personality than if I chose the quote-unquote best exercise for them and they just executed it and it was like, all right, cool, whatever. So like, I want to choose exercises and create scenarios in the weight room in which they're overcoming things that they're either achieving things that they didn't think were possible, or they're overcoming challenges that they didn't think that they could overcome.
Well, I think that's a fantastic philosophy and ideology, and in a sense, by having that ideology, you don't have a traditional strength training ideology, meaning you're not going to say, hey, everyone has to do this or that or this. It's because ultimately you're trying to help them become the best people they can, and you are confident enough in your abilities to say, it doesn't matter. I can use 100 different exercises. These are just toys I'm playing with here in order to get you to be the person you want to be. And
I'll give, like, I didn't mention a single exercise, so I'll at least give, like some kind of insight. Like, I'm 50, like, I love Olympic lifts for myself, and I love Olympic lifts, like, they're pretty darn effective whenever they're done right. Within the sort of the college strength coach community, like, a question is always like, should you do Olympic lifts or not? And the argument for not is, like, they're not impossible to teach, and they're not particularly difficult to teach. But if you're teaching 35 people and you have no interns and it's just you in the room, like, how many of them are going to have the mobility to even do it, to even get their body in the correct position? And then, assuming that you got lucky and everybody has the mobility, which they won't, then how many of those people are going to be neurologically, for lack of a better term, developed enough to nail all the positions that you need to teach in a short enough amount of time that it's worth it?
Yeah, they're not professional athletes. They also have school. They have other things going on. So if they're spending an hour learning how to snatch properly, what else could they be doing in that hour? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm always constantly like wondering if that's a good enough excuse or not. So like I'm sitting here thinking to myself like, did I just come up with that as a really good excuse to make myself feel better for not teaching cleans, or am I just, or do I really believe it? So, but like I have used cleans here at Flagler. We do dumbbell snatches, we do different Olympic variations. So like I'm not opposed to them at all. I do think it comes back to sort of that cost benefit of if I have an hour with these kids, do I want to spend 25 of those 60 minutes just working on technique, as opposed to grab some dumbbells, do some jump squats, or do a box jump, or do some other explosive exercises that and then it takes 5 minutes, and then we're off and running. So they're incredibly useful when done correctly. You just have to decide for yourself, based on your own situation and the competency of the individual athletes, whether or not it's worth using.
Yeah, and it's funny because
go ahead.
I mean, we're both smart enough to convince ourselves in either direction if you really wanted to, right? Because you could also say, well, learning new skills is very important. You're building those neurological connections, you're challenging them. So learning how to do a snatch in and of itself is important during that time. It's not important, right? So, and those skills translate somewhat to most sports, right? Being able to move heavy weight quickly and control it and stop it and worry about the eccentric and the concentric phases, right? So you can convince yourself that it's worthwhile, or you can convince yourself otherwise. What else could I have been doing in that hour I was working with them in this one particular movement, teaching them? We could have been doing plyometric movements that maybe are more tied to the sport. If I was working with basketball players, let's say, right? So there is no bad exercise, right? It's all good. It's all helping them. It's just, when do you do it? When do you not do it?
Right. And then to expand a little bit more on like different exercises that I use, like if you broke it all, if you try to simplify it as much as possible, then it's push, pull, squat, hinge, carry. But like, that's not to say that you train everybody like a powerlifter. That doesn't mean bench, squat, deadlift. Bench is a horizontal press. There's 10,000 horizontal presses that you can use. Same with, like, I'm not going to bother, repeating that exact same thing for squat and deadlift, but it's the same thing. It's what can if those are the movement patterns, I say if I reduce it to a movement pattern as opposed to a specific exercise, then I give myself a lot more freedom of, okay, what exercises can I choose that they're actually going to enjoy, buy into, and believe that are making them better at their sport.
Do you find this is a weird question, answer however you need to, that working with young athletes, because they, you're talking about probably higher testosterone males too, that so many different things work, and that in and of itself could be a difficult it's kind of barrier to get over when you're designing programs, because you could have success just using dumbbells and just doing traditional bodybuilding exercises. But then again, if you just did all plyometrics and body weight, you'd likely have success with, let's say, collegiate level soccer players who are already in such great shape and take care of their bodies. Does that become a problem?
I wouldn't say it's a problem. I'd say probably the opposite is it's perhaps like the only way that it could become a problem is if you're trying to ascertain, like, okay, how effective is the program I actually wrote? Yeah. So in that regard, sure, like it is a problem in that it's difficult to determine how much of a difference did the selection of my exercises and the sets and reps and the volume and all that and the intensities, how much of an effect did that actually play, as opposed to I could have given this guy a shake weight and he still would have like made the progress that he did because he's never seen a weight in his life and anything was going to get him strong. Yeah. So sure, like to a degree, like on the one side, it's like it's difficult to determine how good of a job your program is actually doing. On the other, going back to what we were saying before, because so many of them are either untrained or they only have maybe a year or two of lifting experience, because due to that lack of that lower training age, they can make progress with not just about anything, but a lot more things. So it opens up the options of what we talked about earlier of, well, I don't like this. Well, all right, fine, we don't have to do it. Like, we'll do something else. So I would say it's reassuring in a way that you don't want to lean on it as a crutch of like, I just want to throw anything at them and and it's probably going to work, so I don't really have to think about it. Like, you still want to do your due diligence and decide, okay, this is what I think is going to benefit them the most at their sport, and it's going to reduce the likelihood of them being injured in their sport. But the odds of you choosing something that's going to be good for them are higher the lower their training age is. So I don't see that as a negative outside of the cloudiness that it provides of how good is my program actually.
Yeah, that was a great answer. And of course, your answer had to do with helping the kids. Mine was a little bit more, I guess you would say, loaded towards the industry professionals who claim that their way is the only way, sort of deal, And it's like, well, look how successful my 18-year-old athlete is. It's like, well, you're not comparing it to something else. You're comparing it for him doing nothing and then him doing your thing, as opposed to him doing two different things that could both be beneficial.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that I don't even follow them, but like I see them on my For You page on Instagram. Like these guys that are like training Antonio Brown or they're training LeBron James, and they're like doing all this like Bosu ball stuff and whatever. Like, I'm not saying it works, and I'm not saying it doesn't work. Let's just pretend that like they're on the same wavelength as we are, and it's like this guy's like, okay, I want LeBron to do some core work, and he hates planks, and he hates 6-inch holds, and he hates all this standard stuff. So I'm going to come up with some super random bullshit that looks really cool that he thinks is like, ooh, this secret like elite exercise, and it's still doing what I need to be done, but it's just dressed up in a whole bunch of random bullshit. Yeah. Like, then fine. Like, if it works, it works. So, yeah, like anyone saying like, oh, in both fitness, meaning like exercise and nutrition, like anyone that's telling you that you have to train this way, otherwise you're not doing the right thing. Like, if you're telling me that you have the perfect program and you haven't met me yet, you're wrong. Like, you're full of shit. So anybody saying like, oh, this 60-day this and this 4-week that and whatever, if you're trying to sell me a program and you have no idea who I am or what I enjoy or what my response is to training, then you're a total bullshitter. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I say that as somebody that has programs for sale on my Instagram. The only difference is I just straight up say like, this is a strength program. Yeah. And that's about it. Like, this is a strength program. This is how many days it is. This is what you can probably expect from it. Do it and see if you like it. And then same thing with hypertrophy, same thing with endurance. It's not, this is the best possible program you're ever going to find. Yeah. It's, here's a program that will probably help you get stronger. Give it a try.
Yeah, there's a lot of charlatans out there. I just got a text from a friend, actually. He's like, I'm seeing this guy like V-Shred all over my Instagram. I want to know your thoughts on him and his ideologies and if I should like buy into the program. And I like clicked the video for 1 second. The guy's like, these are the only 3 things you need. I'm like, all right, like I'm done. Like this guy is obviously a charlatan, just selling whatever he has to sell. And I think overall that guy's particular ideology, I don't want to get into him, but it's that, we need to lift more and do less cardio to look better. Okay, it's not really a bad ideology, but to say that you can develop a blanket plan, and send that to everybody based upon whatever their goal is, it seems a little ridiculous.
Yeah, and like same thing with dieting, like every single diet that you can possibly name, like keto, Atkins, paleo, carnivore, intermittent fasting, whatever it is, like again, there is no perfect diet. So anyone that says like everyone should be doing this or like these or whatever, like there's some universal constants of like, don't consume X, Y, and Z that you could you at the very least could probably get pretty close to like, you know what? I don't think anybody needs to eat this. Fair enough. Yeah. But by and large, like an entire dietary philosophy, if some people will just take like low carb versus low fat. Like if person A is just absolutely loves crunchy things and doesn't really care about the savory that much, then they should do low fat. Or I shouldn't even say they should. They would likely have more success with low fat because it enables them to have more carbs, more crunchy stuff, and just be more satisfied by the food they're eating. As opposed to if someone's like, I don't really care that much about, my chips or my or whatever, but they're like, I love my hard cheeses or my soft cheeses, my peanut butters, my almond butters, my really savory stuff, my steak, then they should do high fat and low carb because carbs aren't that important to them. So The only thing that really, quote unquote, people should do is get enough protein. Everything else, in terms of your fat and your carbs, can be whatever ratio you want it to be, as long as you are seeing the results you want to see and you can adhere to it. And that doesn't, I haven't said anything about micronutrients or anything like that. But if you're just if you're just talking about macros and like what's the best fat, protein, and carb thing, because that's generally how people sell their diets, is it's low carb or it's high this or whatever. It's high protein for everybody, and then fat and carbs however the hell you want to do it.
Yeah, there's this weird psychological game that people play too, is that they've, anecdotally it's worked for them, whatever, let's say this diet choice is, this type, and then they go on these like sort of ideology like rampages where they, it's because it's worked for them and that's the thing that they know. They need to sort of let everyone else know that this works. They're also trying to reconvince themselves that they made the right choice. Right? This is the only thing that would have worked for me, when it's like, well, no, I mean, almost all these caloric restriction things would have allowed you to lose weight. You chose this one. It worked for you. And now you're dyed in the wool. And I think that's also, you see that in the fitness industry. I don't know if that's in your particular like strength training, but you'll see like personal trainers who, let's say, start with like a kettlebell. And that's all they use. And they develop all these exercises with the kettlebell. And they're like, all you need is the kettlebell. All you have to do is kettlebell. We can design everything around the kettlebell. And then, as you get older and you've seen more in the industry, you eventually sort of come back to a more generalized approach like you have. Hey, I'm about the client. I can make the tools work for the client. There are some general concepts that we have to all agree upon, right? You have to have enough protein to build muscle. You have to be doing some sort of strength training to advance. But there aren't these like dyed in the wool concepts that most people think there are. Yeah,
like if you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So if you lost 50 pounds on the Atkins diet, good for you. But that doesn't mean that the Atkins diet is going to cure this guy's arthritis. Like, relax.
Oh man, you see too much of that. That's probably the biggest issue I have with the podcast. I have so many people who try to get on here who have these like, they're just trying to promote this one weird thing that they believe in, and they're not always charlatans, but they don't actually care about the person. They almost care more about the individual concept, if that makes sense, right? It would be like if you came on and you were like, all I want to talk about is like Olympic lifting, and like not how you help the people, but like how important Olympic lifting is in general. It's like the concept is secondary to the people. So
yeah, in that case, you're on the wrong podcast, because you can go on some, like if Matty Rogers or like Lou Xiaojun or like whoever is like hosting a podcast, and it's like, let's really, get into the bells and whistles of the clean and jerk, then yeah, like nerd the hell out about it. But like on a podcast like this, or just when you're kind of talking about like training in general for the normie, like, yeah, if you're, whether you're a coach, a strength coach, whether you're a sport coach, a strength coach, or a personal trainer, if your first priority isn't how am I helping this person get better, whether it's at the bare minimum at their sport, or more importantly, am I helping them? Am I increasing the likelihood that they're going to experience success in their life? If that's not the first question you're asking yourself, or how you're grading yourself by, then I'm not going to say you're instantly a bad coach, but I think you're capping yourself at how much good you can do.
Yeah, totally. And the sporting world is the same thing as our world, sort of in the health and fitness realm, wherein you see there's some coaches who have an ideology, but the best coaches fit their ideology to their players, not always fit their players to their ideology, if that makes sense, right? So if I'm running the option offense and I'm all about the option offense, and one year I have a quarterback who has a fantastic arm, well, that means I should be throwing the ball more downfield, because I have to take advantage of my players and work towards their skill sets. And I think that's what we have to do in the fitness and health industry also, is see like where does my athlete lack, or where does my client lack in, what are they good in, and sort of assess those things and build a program accordingly to that.
Yeah, like good example, like with my volleyball girls and my basketball guys, like obviously those are some tall, long-limbed, have difficulty squatting type of athletes. So like I'll still program squats for them, but instead of jamming them under a bar and forcing them to back squat, some of them love back squatting, and some of them are really good at it. So I've started just literally writing squat on the sheet where I want them to do that, and then I tell them, like, you do whatever the hell you want. Like, you can do a Zercher if you want to. Like, as long as you are as long as you are at the intensity that I expect for the number of reps that I prescribed, I don't care if you do a back, front, Zercher, leg press, goblet, or anything else. Like, you're getting, you are crossing the threshold of the amount of benefit I want you to get from that exercise, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, well, that's great advice, and I'm glad you said that too, because I think a lot of personal trainers do struggle with that. They think they think all of these things have like a sort of like a superiority numbered list. It's like, no, back squat's first, and then front squat second, and then this is third, and like you would only goblet squat if you absolutely couldn't do any of these. It's like, well, I get that, but also there needs to be an enjoyment level to all of these things, and then also, there's actual science and data that says if you're nervous about doing an exercise, you're more likely to get injured doing that exercise. Now, I don't know if that's an like sort of a chicken before the egg thing. Like, were you nervous because you already had a high likelihood to get injured, or whatever? But I have clients who are just nervous about putting weight on their back. They're older, they're in their 50s, so I don't do it.
Yeah. Like, I have athletes that, and I think like, on the one, you don't want to let the pendulum swing too far in one direction and say, like, okay, do literally whatever you want, never be uncomfortable. You don't have to do anything that like things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying do that. However, like, I make it a point to make sure my athletes know that they're allowed to come up to me and say, like, and just straight up tell me, like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
And they've done so. Like, I'm proud of them for doing that. Like, and because the solution is not, oh, okay, we'll go sit down and just wait till everyone else is done. It's, let's find something that you can do. And if so, like, and I won't, obviously, I'm not going to say anybody, but like, couple of my athletes, came to me before I even started training them and said, well, I had back issues at my last school, or back issues in high school, or like, I didn't like our training program because they just focused, like, a lot of my Olympic athletes, like my tennis players and my golfers, will say, like, like my last school, they just lifted us like football players, and they just like made us just like jammed us under a bar, and things like that. So now, like, I hurt my back doing trap bar, like maxing out on trap bar deadlifts, and now, like, I'm really scared to do any lower body stuff. So I recognize that you are nervous about this thing. We need to remind you that you as a human with a resilient physical being are capable of not only returning to where you were previously, but becoming more capable than that. And so if that means that we goblet squat for a year and you go from 30 pounds to 90 pounds, who the hell cares if you never touched a barbell? Like, that's progress to me. Then maybe we never get under a bar. I don't care. I got somebody that literally only Zerchers. No front squats, no back squats, no nothing. And you better believe she busts her ass on her Zerchers. It's not like she just uses the empty bar and that's it. Like, she found a way, and this is kind of what I say, is like, this is what I'll tell my athletes, like, I am looking for a way, I'm looking for an exercise that you are able to perform at the highest intensity possible with no fear whatsoever of injury. So for her, that's a Zercher squat, because it's just the way that the weight counterbalances her. She can get deep. It's for her, it's just way more comfortable than having a bar on her back or a bar on her collarbone. And like I said, she gets the hell after it. Like, she busts her ass on Zercher squats. So if that's all I'm looking for, like, who cares that it wasn't a bar on her back or a bar on her collarbone? She pushed a lower body exercise to the point of near failure. That works for me.
If there's a personal trainer who maybe has, let's say, their bachelor's in some sort of sports performance related thing, and maybe they're thinking about getting their master's, maybe they already do, and they want to work in your career field, they're ready to sort of move on and move up the ladder, if you will, to become somebody who works in sports performance with a college. What other advice do you have outside of the absolute like credentials that they need? We already discussed that. What other advice do you have just from a general perspective as someone who's been doing it a while for them to become successful? Should they be mentoring somebody? Should they find a mentor like you and be an apprentice? Should they read a particular book? Any advice that you have for them?
Yeah. If the question is how do I become a college strength coach, the answer is get in a college weight room as quickly as you can. And like I won't wax too much about this, but like the pay for college strength positions is all over the map. So I'm fortunate that, you know, my Flagler takes care of me. But I know like previous places, like I was like under the poverty line. So, so with that said, like assuming one is in college, like the best thing that you can do as an 18 to 22 year old is volunteer. So I should say the reason I brought up the money stuff is because there is an incredibly high likelihood that you're going to work for free for longer than you would like.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. It's not right, but I'm not endorsing it. But if you want to be a strength coach, you currently have no choice. So it's a whole lot easier to work for free when mom and dad are still paying most of your bills. So from 18 to 22 is when you want to just whether it's the school that you're attending, just go see if they have I'm sure they have an athletic department. So go see what their strength staff is like. And I sincerely doubt any strength coach that is even kind of worth their salt is going to get an email saying, hey, do you mind if I come by and observe? And they're going to be like, nah, no, you can't. At the very least, they're going to let you come in and look around and ask some questions. At best, they'll say like, hey, yeah, we'll take an intern. So like if I was looking at resumes, and I won't even give the full scenario. If I'm looking at resumes, the first thing I'm looking at is experience. So if you quote unquote only have a bachelor's, but you started interning when you were 16, and you're a senior now, so you've spent 6 years in a college weight room, as opposed to say somebody that has a bachelor's, a master's, and a certification, and they've only spent 6 months in a college weight room. Like I'm picking the first guy, or girl. Like I'm picking the first person because the likelihood that they understand like the practice of strength and conditioning far more so than just the theory of it compared to the second person. Like we can work on the theory, you know. Like I can come work for me and I'll learn you. Like we can work on the education and expanding your toolbox and improving your knowledge of the human body and things like that. But I can't teach you experience. I can't give you the experiences that you won't learn in a book unless you just go have them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Short answer. So in a nutshell, the short answer is go get as much real world on the floor weight room experience as you possibly can.
Yeah. And like you said, typically if you do find someone who you could intern underneath, a mentor of some sort, someone in your position, they're going to want to teach you their ways, right? They're going to want to bring you along and show you how they go about doing things. They're not going to turn you down. I think people are afraid to do it. I wish this sort of apprenticeship model was more in line in both the personal training industry and really anything surrounding health and fitness, where you really learned underneath other successful people in the business and learn their ways. And not just one person, right? Learn under 4 or 5, take things from all of them, throw some things away you don't like, and then you can kind of develop your personality faster to become more successful. Yeah,
and I was really fortunate that every single professor or coach, or I should say every professor or strength coach that I've worked under has understood the importance of understood the importance of developing me professionally as a coach. Like that, nobody ever looked at me and said, "Oh, cool, free help. Go sweep the floor and go get me coffee." Like they always made it their responsibility to, okay, we've got to make sure that they made it their responsibility to give me responsibility. Like we've got to make sure that this guy has some worthwhile stuff to do. Otherwise, why do we have him here? So like whenever I was interning as an undergrad, like I was getting class credit for an internship, like as soon as I was able to demonstrate that I was competent and, able to work a room, or, like able to be comfortable in a room with X number of athletes, then my supervisor at the time would say, okay, you take the warm up, or okay, you take the core, or you know what, like I'm gonna go do paperwork in my office, like you take the whole session. So so then right after that, when I went to grad school, and it was, hey, you're a grad assistant, but you have 9 teams, and you're writing their programs, and you're supervising them, off you go. Then I was already prepared for it. And the grad school thing of like off you go, I'm not saying that as a negative either. Like that was terrific, because I, as a 22-year-old, was given 9 different sports teams to program for and to supervise and to do everything like that. So then by the time I got a full-time assistant position with fewer teams, I was like, okay, like I've done this already.
Yeah.
And then again, furthermore, like once I got into this position, all of that cumulative experience, I was like, okay, I'm just doing the same thing here now. Like there was nothing that I wasn't prepared for by the previous experience that I had.
Yeah, and at some point you had to be, quote unquote, thrown into the fire. And wouldn't you rather be thrown into the fire when you're younger and people expect less of you, and you do have a sort of a safety net of these other coaches, rather than coming out with all of these degrees and certifications and you look great on your resume? People think, oh, this guy must know what the fuck he's doing. And then, but they don't actually have experience, and then they get put in front of the team, and it's one of those like, oh shit scenarios where you didn't, you never got thrown into the fire and you were just passing tests the entire time.
Yeah, like two things. One, from time to time, like as a staff, we would like reach out to the other area schools, and not here, but previously, like we'd reach out to the other area schools and be like, hey, strength staff, like let's go get wings or something, and just like chit chat and talk shop.
Yeah.
And this one guy, like spent the entire dinner like bragging about how much he got his coaches to back off, or like I'm trying to think, like how he was bragging about like how well he was able to assert his authority in terms of like, I'm the strength coach, I don't want to hear from you, like I'm not going to take, hey sport coach, I'm not going to take anything you say into account, like I'm the professional, or I'm the expert, let me do my job. And I was like, I was just whatever, but in my head I was like, good for you, buddy, like have fun on that island you just put yourself.
Yeah.
So like when something actually does hit the fan, you're completely screwed. Like nobody is going to go to bat for you. And like on the flip side, like I had people that I had supervisors that like let me make mistakes, and like gave me a safety net. So if I don't think I ever got close to like doing something that was so bad that they were like, yo, stop, like that's bad. But they like gave me enough freedom and enough of a sandbox to try a whole bunch of different things, let it blow up in my face when they knew it was going to, but still sit me down or whatever and say like, hey, here's how you screwed that up. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. But I got better as a coach from it. I know for a fact that, like, to your point about like you gotta you have that oh shit moment, or like you can only be so prepared.
Sure.
Like I had to. I know for a fact there's at least a couple dozen athletes that I've coached that probably don't think very highly of me because I managed them the wrong way. And not having to be, like, I was never a bad coach on the floor, but like ways that I like tried to motivate them, or ways that I spoke to them after they after they lost or things like that. Like I tried some stuff that totally didn't work, that like really didn't work, that like showed up on end of year surveys, this guy's an asshole, didn't work. And I saved those because I still needed to. I think it's good to remember, like, you did get the opportunity to workshop all that, and now you have a much more refined presentation, but don't forget that you used to screw things up like that all the time.
That's great advice. This has been fantastic, Connor. I'm going to list all of your information below, but why don't you also just give the audience a rundown of where they can find you if they need to reach out to you personally, your IG, and anything else.
Sure. So I don't care about, like, we have 400 athletes at Flagler, and they all have my cell phone number, so I don't care about giving my cell phone number out. It is 580-6271. Reason I give it out is if you're local to St. Augustine, or even like local enough, like Jacksonville is only half an hour away. If you have any interest in interning, or even just stopping by and shadowing, or if you're across the country and you just want to call and chat, then you're more than welcome to shoot me a text, introduce yourself, and we can set something up. Email cgettemy@flagler.edu. So cgettemy@flagler.edu, and that's just, again, if you want to reach out, please do so. Instagram is Connor, CONNOR .Gettemy, GETTEMY. That's, I'll call it my professional page, but it's, funny stuff, informational stuff. I do take, as I said, I take personal clients, I take online clients. So if you're interested in training or anything like that, then that's where to contact me for that. But one way or the other, just say hi, because I'll always appreciate it.
My guest today has been Connor Gettemy. Connor, thank you so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast.
Thanks for having me.